Hey everyone, welcome back to the Weekly Coder. In this next episode of Conway's Game of Life, we are in part 13, by the way. We're gonna finally kind of put together our whole WebGL, because I mean we've been working. We've what, 2 episodes in now to WebGL, and we really haven't done anything. We haven't really written any Unity code, so I know you guys are ready for that to start actually making it work. So there were a few prerequisites that we had to take care of. Number 1, PHP needed to be installed. Number 2, we had to make sure that the PHP server was running. Number 3, we had to create some PHP files that we're going to interface with in Unity. And now that we've got all that out of the way, we can go ahead and start working on the files, the code to actually save and load our files. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll start with the saving, okay? Just the same way as we did before. And the way that we're going to do that is what we're going to use is called... Okay, first of all, let's start with this. Let's open up the game class, because that's where it's all at. Okay, that's where we're going to do all of our work. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to include some more namespaces, because in order to utilize the XML HTTP requests, we're going to need to use Unity Engine.networking. And then in order to utilize some of the other things that we need, we are going to need the system.txt namespace. So since we only need those for WebGL, okay, here's the fun part. We're going to do some preprocessor directives now. We are going to check if we are building for WebGL, and if we are building for WebGL, then we're going to include those 2 namespaces. So the way that we do that is we just start off with a pound, and then you'll see we've got this drop down that comes up, and we can start with if. And then we have all these options here. We can say Unity, WebGL. That means that we are doing a WebGL build. And then we have to close that off with end if. So anything between these 2 lines will only get executed if we're running the if we're building for WebGL. So what we'll do is we'll do using Unity Engine.networking and using system.txt. Okay, so if we're building for WebGL, then we're also going to include these 2 namespaces. So the next thing that we'll need to do is we're going to need to create a variable, and we're going to make this one public, and we'll call this base URL. And that's going to be of type string. And the way that that's going to work is when we test in the editor, actually, yeah, when we test locally on our machine, our base URL is going to be different than if we were to upload to a server, right? So on a server, if I were to upload that to the Weekly Coder website, my base URL would be something like https://weeklycoder.com/wp-content/uploads/2020/Conway, for instance. That would be my base URL for my server, for my remote server. For my local machine, though, the base URL would be http://localhost:9999. That's where that comes into play, okay? So where we're going to put that is just right in here in the start method. And since it's only one variable, we can't put 2 different values in it, but what we can do is we can check to see if we're in the Unity editor, right? So if Unity editor, right, then we can set base URL equal to http localhost 9999. Otherwise, so else, we are running a build So we want to use our production URL, which will be base URL equals https weeklycoder.com wp content uploads 2020 Conway and then HTML, because remember that's in the HTML folder. All of your stuff is inside of the HTML folder, and that's where we're going to point to. So wherever you upload, you need a hello path plus the HTML folder. And then from here, we just do end if. And if you look closely, you can see that base URL here is white, and base URL here is kind of grayed out. That's because the editor is smart enough to know what platform we're currently set to build against. So right now what platform we're currently in, right? So we're in the editor. You'll see, as far as the Unity WebGL goes, how this is going to affect the rest of the program here in a minute. So let's say that we go to our, I'm going to do a save. So in save pattern, we are going to go all the way down to our XML serializer here. Okay. And we are going to put in a preprocessor directive. And that's going to say if Unity WebGL. And we're going to have our else. And then right at the bottom here, we're going to do our end if. Okay. So again, the editor knows that we are building against WebGL. So it's going to gray out everything that's in the else statement, and everything that's in here it's going to show as being active. So in order to write our serialized object to PHP, what we need to do is we need to use string writer instead of stream writer. And we're going to call this writer and new string writer. And then what we'll do is we'll do serializer dot serialize writer and pattern, which is our object. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start a coroutine. And a coroutine is going to be called save file to server, and that's not been created yet. But we are going to do writer.toString, which is going to be the all the content, right, that we're going to write to the file. And then we're going to do a comma, and then our path is going to be patterns slash plus pattern name. Whoops. Why is that not coming up? Oh, because we never created that variable. So it's going to be hud.saveDialog.patternName.text plus .xml. And make sure that we put a semicolon here at the end. And right here, this is telling us that we don't have save file to server created, so we need to actually create it. So we'll come down here, and we'll do, since this is a coroutine, we have to start with IEnumerator. Save file to server, and then the not patterns, parameters. The two parameters that we're going to pass are going to be serialized object, serialized object, and the path. Okay. So then here we're going to start using our actual, what is this complaining about? Oh, it doesn't return a value. Okay, that's fine. We'll get to that. We're going to use the networking part. So this is the www form. We're going to create a form. and we're going to instantiate it with www.form, the constructor. And then we're going to add field. And that field is going to be path. And this, if you'll remember from our previous video, are those two variables that we do post, and then the post variables that we get are path and object. Add field, object, serialized object. Okay. So now our form is actually finished. Now what we need to do is we need to initialize the web request that we're going to use to send our form data. So what we do here is we use using Unity web request, and then we're going to assign Unity web request dot post base URL plus save file.php. That's the name of the PHP file that we created, and then pass in the form. Okay. So then our web request variable here is going to get assigned the output of this post. Okay, and that runs asynchronously. So what we need to do here is we need to put a yield, and we need to return the web request dot send web request. Okay, so when we send this web request, it's going to start an asynchronous request, and that's going to yield return so that we don't lock up our Unity editor. And then what we'll need to do is we need to check to see if there are any errors. So we do web request dot is network error, or web request dot is HTTP error. From here we can say, well, if there were any errors, we can say debug.log web request dot error. We can error or log out the error to the console. And then otherwise, if everything worked fine, we can say debug.log web request download handler.text. Okay, saying, hey, this is the basically the echo out of the file, right? Whatever we said to echo out from the PHP file, that's what comes in the download handler.text. And then we can also add in another one that says just finished saving file. Okay. So this right here gets called from way somewhere else. Did I pass it? Yeah, it gets called right here actually. Start code routine, save file to server. So that should be all the code we need to actually make our save function work now. So if we go and we load this up, we're building for WebGL, remember? So if we were to try to load a file, we would still see these, interestingly enough. Let's make sure that we're actually got our build settings. Yeah, we are set for WebGL. Let's see if we can save. We'll probably get an error. Just testing here. Okay, so if you look at the console, you'll see that it created this, right? This is what it wants to save, but we got an error saying cannot connect to destination host. And that's probably because we don't have our server running. So what we need to do is we need to write php-s and making sure that we are in the HTML folder, right here. php-s localhost :9999. Alright, so now our server is running. Now if we try to save again, notice how we've got this here. Save. We'll just keep the same name. Save. And now we got another error. Failed to open stream, no such file or directory. So it's telling us that we do not have, on line 6 of our PHP file, see if we can find that anywhere. Let's see here. Open with Sublime. Okay, so if we look at our PHP file and it's telling us on line 6, if bytes equals file put contents path. So what it's probably having a hard time finding is the path for our file. And that basically could just mean that it can't find the patterns folder, which we haven't created yet. So in here, where our server is, let's go ahead and stop, and on a Mac that's Control-C. And if we list that, we can say, oh, well, there is no patterns folder, so we're going to mkdir patterns. And also, we're going to chmod that folder to make sure that it's writable. Chmod 777 patterns. And we don't really need to recursively mod it, but if you want to know how to do that, you do chmod-R 777 patterns. What that does is it traverses all the folders and any of the files that are in there and makes sure that they are all the same permissions. So now we could run the server again, php-s localhost 9999. Alright, so here we are. In the wrong folder, actually. No, this is fine. This can be the right folder. Even though we're in part 13, we can still work off of this folder because we haven't changed the PHP files, so this is fine. So we should be able to... Actually, you know what? Let's do this the right way. Make sure that not only are you in the right HTML folder, but also the right project folder. So I'm going to go into Conway's Game of Life 13. 13. Nope. There. Conway's Game of Life 13. Okay, so now we're in 13, and now we can go to HTML, and now we can, in here, create our folder, mkdir, patterns, and then we do chmod-r 777 patterns, and then we start the server, php-s localhost 9999. Our server is started. Let's run our application. And let's press the save button and write in test. Okay, so now if you look at the console, you'll see it says saved 3265 bytes. Or just saved 3265. So if we go and inspect that folder now, we go back here, and let's stop the server, do a list, patterns. Now we've got a test.xml. So if we look at that file, cat test.xml, it looks a lot like the files that we used to save on our own file system when we had this running on the desktop, right? So that's cool. So let's leave patterns, go back to HTML, and let's start the server again. So I think, yep. So in this video, what we did is we basically learned how to utilize the networking portion of Unity to utilize the XML HTTP request to send data to a PHP file that then processes that data and saves a file for us on our server, which is pretty cool because now we can use I/O in WebGL so that we can save and load files. So that's pretty awesome, right? So in this video, what we did is we basically took care of the saving functionality. In the next video, what we'll do is we'll do the loading functionality. And I think that is going to be our very last Conway's Game of Life video. I don't see any reason to do any more after that. Unless you guys have anything in particular you'd like to see. I think part 14 will be our final in the series. And then we're going to have to think about what we're going to do next. Maybe I'll revisit some of my older projects and see if we can spice them up a little bit. Or maybe something new altogether. Who knows? So I hope you like this video. I hope you like this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Comments go down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget to check out my Patreon. I always welcome new patrons. It's like nothing I would ever turn down. If you guys want to support me, that's awesome. Everyone who's already supporting me, it's so, like, I can't even begin to tell you how much I actually appreciate that. You know, random people that I don't know coming to my Patreon page to give me money. It's super awesome. You know, I try to do these tutorials to the best of my knowledge. I do a lot of research to try and make sure that I give you guys accurate information, and I hope that you guys actually learn from it. So, yep, that is pretty much it. That's my rant. I will see you guys in the next video.